Mr. Michel and Ms. Fuenmayor, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here. And when I have been asked to give a keynote speech here at the Hong Kong Fashion Summit and read the key subject was digital revolution, I just thought I might need to ask somebody for help. Executive Director of ZDHC Foundation. ZDHC Foundation stands for Sustainable Chemistry. But what is the role of multi-stakeholder initiatives in the digital revolution? So today in our presentation, with support of Neliana, we will try to educate you and show you what multi-stakeholders can do, what multi-stakeholder organizations can do to drive the digital revolution and align the industry to accelerate what we already do is aligning to find better standards and driving sustainability. So talking about ZDHC, Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemistry, who is familiar with that program? Can I just ask for, okay, a few people seem to be familiar with what we're doing. When did it start? It did start in 2011. And what is the program about? The program is about sustainable chemistry. And in 2011, a NGO, Greenpeace, connected the dots between the pollution of the fashion industry in production countries and the high-street fashion brands. It was a paradigm shift in the industry and also in the awareness of the use of sustainable chemistry and what is needed to transition an entire industry. Transitioning an entire industry, what does that mean? First of all, you need to get the right people on the table. And when we look back to 2011, it's quite a long time, and I just hear Philip from WWF saying, well, we need to do more, we need to take actions. Right, it does take time to create the awareness, to create the tools, and to move forward. The industry is huge. The supply chains are complex. When we are thinking, we grew as the organization from 6 brands that initially collaborated to now more than 130 organizations across the value chain. We have manufacturers, we have solution providers, and we have brands driving that initiative. What is the program about? It is shifting the paradigm from an industry that has been driven by product compliance. It is looking at fabric and protecting consumers in target regions where regulators, they regulate the chemistry that is supposed to be in their products. But does that help production countries? It does not. So the paradigm shift was creating a list of chemistry that is banned from intentional use in textile manufacturing. It is shifting the paradigm here from a regional product compliance to a global proactive supply chain management and innovation leadership. What does that mean? If you're a regulator, I can only regulate within my borderlines. If I'm a brand and I'm working in global supply chains, with my procurement and my expectations towards the suppliers, I can change the industry. These requirements are embedded in the program. So we look at a holistic perspective where we control the input, the process, and the output. Okay, somebody calling me? So the input, controlling the input chemistry. In theory, when you use good input chemistry, that leads to clean products, clean air, clean soil, in theory. We do need to see that good chemistry also reacts and that we need to control the process. And if you control the process, you also want to make sure that it is all applied and it's trust and verify, so we also do control the outputs. When we started building the program, you start with a list. It's great to have a list. So we have a manufacturing restricted substance list, and you go to manufacturers and tell them, take this list and try to avoid this chemistry. What do you think they do? They say, great, yes, we will do. But then behind closed curtains, they tell you, it's actually, we don't have the expertise. Chemistry is complicated. Can you tell us what products we can use and what manufacturers are producing safer products? So the program really started developing a tool set, a holistic tool set to manage the input. So here in this regards, we learned from our pilot projects that we needed to have a tool which is a bit like the Amazon of all textile chemistry. So we created the gateway chemical module where we invited all the chemical suppliers to upload their products that are conforming to our list. That makes the life a lot easier for manufacturers to have these products that are complying. And for us, it gives a clear guideline and a framework on which we can hold chemical suppliers accountable that they're producing better qualities. And we do not want to stage on the level where we are. We want to move upwards and want to create better qualities in order to drive sustainability in chemistry. When we talk about that catalog, the second thing we heard behind the closed curtains was, how can we actually measure our performance? How can we show our customers that we are conforming? So we built some tool set where we create a such called ChemCheck. That is a product that the manufacturers can ask from their chemical suppliers that proves that it is conforming to ZDHC. And the InCheck report, which is indicating on a manufacturer's performance on sustainable chemistry. Those tools are really young. They're out there since 1 year. We're educating the industry how valuable they are and transitioning them into a currency of product performance. When we look at process, and without diving too much in the detail, we do need guidance. We do see here, Sita is one of the most remarkable educators in the textile industry. We'll talk about that later. And education is a key component. When we think about the collaboration of multi-stakeholder initiatives, I would object saying we need more initiatives. I think we already have a lot of initiatives and we need to converge. We need to concentrate on our core competencies and we really need to harmonize those schemas that are in place. A really good example is the collaboration that we have with the SAC and the FEM, where we collaborate on chemistry. We also need to take into consideration having a solution in place is nice, but how do we really evaluate if the industry is implementing? So we introduced our Signatory Brand Leader program. Signatory brands are all the brands that want to sit on the table at ZDHC as contributors. They have to undergo an assessment, which we did the first time this year with KPMG, in order to see how they have implemented the program as a baseline and measure the progress we're making in order transitioning the industry. We will get questions, is the water cleaner? Is the product safer? In order to answer these questions, it's important to spread out these leader programs to the facilities, to the chemical industry as a self-pressurized system in order to drive the improvements. The holistic approach in terms of the output control, wastewater. We all talk about climate change, which is a pressing subject. I want to recall that the access to drinking water, to clean drinking water, is getting tighter. And we're using and consuming a lot of water to produce our products. Drinking water doesn't have a price tag in many countries. And when we take that into consideration, we have to be very conscious on how we use water. And this is, as part of the ZDHC program, a clear indicator where we focused on the wastewater guidelines as the initial step before we dedicate our next step in output control on the air emission, which is on the way and will be released in next year. The same thing here. When we looked at the impact of the program, we have been asked, is the water cleaner? How can you prove it? We are asking facilities to upload their wastewater reports, their testing reports, into our public disclosure portal. We have a disclosure map, and we very much follow the IPE in China with their pollution map, which is a great example on how you can achieve transparency in transforming the industry. And transforming the industry, transparency, digital revolution is what we'll look at in a bit. Clearstream report is also the indicator for the facilities, how they can learn, where am I, where do I need to go? What is a corrective action plan that I need to bring in place? Talking about chemistry, chemistry is an enabler. when we are talking about good chemistry between people, it's usually something positive. When we talk about chemistry in fashion, it's mainly mistaken as toxicity. But everything we have is chemistry. Every color, every pattern is chemistry. We need it. It is positive. We want to bring it to life. We need to clear the perception that chemistry in general is bad. We are all chemistry. However, the role of chemistry is also enabling for sustainability trends that we need to take into account. We are a linear economy, and Neliana will talk about this, but we need to move away from a recycling economy to a circular economy. And if you control the inputs, if you know what's in your product, you do set the first targets in order to make products recyclable. When we look at the ZDHC tool set that we developed over the last years, we do believe it is a crucial point to trust the industry in the good intention to make it better, to raise the awareness, but it's trust and verification. Trust and verification that we give guidance, that we educate, that also develop new tools, and by the end of the day, the verification shows the initiative and those that are really acting as front runners, and also to incentivize them to invest. By the end of the day, I mean, we heard this morning about the development in Hong Kong, and I do appreciate, I really perceived Hong Kong as very safe and still very, very vibrant. We do see that the incentivization is commercial. We need to have an incentive. Why is sustainability also a commercial aspect? Why is controlling chemistry by reducing supply chain complexity desirable? That is part of the education we do, and we do this in a multi-stakeholder initiative. And coming back to the digital revolution. So when we hear about blockchain, new technologies, first of all, this was raising question marks, and if you would have mentioned to me that I would stand on stage here today and partially talk about blockchain and digital revolution, I would have considered that this is not happening because my knowledge in technology is not anywhere there. However, together with our dear partners, the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, we started a study in order to do research on what is the role of multi-stakeholder initiatives in aligning these activities. We all hear brands do blockchain projects, and we hear something this afternoon in the breakout session, which is very enlightening. And it's enlightening to see that a lot of parts of the industries are collecting experiences. But how can we, instead of creating new silos, how can we align this? How can we use the network and the activities that we already do in aligning the industry to also embrace this new technology, embrace the learnings that we do in order to move forward? Neliana, we created that slide in order to show the multi-stakeholder single point of truth. And I think before I hand over to Neliana, we identified, if you see the production steps in our industry, that every production step has a component of chemistry. And connecting this production step in chemistry, we see we are in the same boat like other stakeholders, like other multi-stakeholder organizations. Can you give us your insight where you believe, where should the multi-stakeholder organizations move?
Sure, thank you, Frank, and thank you, everyone. Neliana, I'm the founder of A Transparent Company, London-based consultancy, helping the fashion industry accelerate positive impact through enabling technologies. One of them is blockchain, as Frank has mentioned. We wanted to do this joint presentation to give you a picture of how we have analyzed the production steps in supply chains and how we believe that through collaboration, as we have mentioned, all these organizations that exist and many, many more. Sorry, I didn't have enough space to add them all. We really believe that there's a great opportunity for alignment in the industry based on data points. And this is how we could measure that impact and how we can report back on how positive it can be. I will take you through this journey, but first of all, I wanted to set the vision for the study that I've been very honored to be leading for SAC, Sustainable Power Coalition, and ZDHC into making this vision come true. We all know we do live in one world, even though we are all scattered around the world, we are connected, and one single point of truth for our industry is what we need in order to bring greater transparency and trust in the operations and the claims that we as all consumers or part of the industry, we are looking for. Therefore, the research we're doing is based on decentralized ledger technologies and how this can increase it for a transparent supply chain. This is a slide that I've been using for already 3 years to introduce what blockchain is in fashion supply chains. In 2017, we enabled the first case study on the first garment ever tracked on blockchain. We released it in the Copenhagen Fashion Summit then. And the idea is to, how can we connect defragmented silos? How can we connect the current supply chain in fashion and enable more information and therefore confidence on what's being claimed? How can a brand have more information and visibility on where the raw material is coming from? Or how do we know that there's no modern slavery or child labor happening in our supply chains? If we operate in silos and there's no interoperability in between the information exchange, then it will be very difficult. What blockchain could help is to enable and transform and transition the linear into the circular by creating consensus and more transparency, therefore trust between the actors of supply chains, by creating a more safe environment and ecosystem in which you can share data, still preserving certain securities and privacies, but enabling a product to actually be transparent in a way that this data is more secure, is auditable, and is sharing one layer, one single point of truth. So as part of the research, we're coming up with this concept of how could multi-stakeholder initiatives lead all the efforts that new projects are coming up on testing the benefits and limitations of the decentralized ledger technology, and we're calling it the multi-stakeholder ledger, like the one I just showed you for all the logos of initiatives. In order to create, enable this space for true collaboration and feel secure whilst aligning the data points and creating a one communication language. This is one of the problems we have today, that everybody has its own terms and its own operations. So here's where we want to show how could a multi-stakeholder ledger can connect social impact, environmental impact data points, as well as how can governance and investment come all together and create more value towards the one singular direction. In the case of supply chains, this will translate from raw material, fiber processes, brand retail, and manufacturing, and of course, the consumer. So here's where we would like to, we've done a study of all the data points per fiber. In this case, it's cotton. It could also be pulp from viscose. I'm just going to take you through very quickly, because I don't have much time. But yeah, what would be the supply chain communication steps communication look like? In block 1, which will be a tier for raw material, we have all the data points that the cotton seed would allow for that information to connect and to be then stamped, to then be transferred to the next one with a protocol that can be rejected or accepted based on what has been decided collectively what would be the greatest standard of product compliance for that specific raw material. And therefore, the steps of farming. And then this will go to the next block, which will be the spinning, the knitting. And again, after this, how do we transfer it to the next suppliers? As Frank said, supply chains are very complex. And what we need is alignment and the same language. As well as design, my background is in fashion design, and I think designers, we have a lot of responsibility as well on when sourcing materials, as well as where we do produce them. So this will be another block. And this example is our organic cotton t-shirt. And yeah, the idea is how can we all be part of this same common single point of truth? And below, I'm showing you like the new language proposal in terms of production tiers is the block, the data points, and that transfer that happens in between will be through a smart contract. Smart contracts allow you to not change the information that has been input, and this is one of the main features that's very important in order to trust that the information has not been tampered or changed, and therefore it goes into the next block, where the brand, the retailer, can also take responsibility for what has happened throughout the value chain of the supply chain, all the way to the product. And this is where SAC with the HIG is working a lot on how could we align that communication, what are consumers expecting in terms of what makes a product more sustainable or ethical. And how can that be proved? So one of the things we're looking at is proof of origin or proof of sustainability through smart labels, and how could that enable that transparency at the moment of purchase for then consumers to have that trust, build that trust on the brand, and on the claim that actually I am buying an organic cotton t-shirt if that's what I care about. So yeah, this is a very brief overview of what we're doing and how we believe that a multi-stakeholder initiative could help connect the dots between governance, investment, social and environmental, which they coexist. If our rivers are polluted, the community also suffers. And so, yeah, we believe that this study could help align the industry data points.
It certainly helps me to understand the vision. What really struck me in the past was always when you are working on product compliance, and I believe some of you have that experience, you're always in scope, you're always in focus when you're the distributor. You are distributing, you are importing into the EU, you're importing into the US. But what has actually happened before? How can we make every production step hold accountable for the work they're doing? How can we avoid duplicative testing? How can we actually embrace what we have? And what I find striking in this regard, Neliana, is the appetite of the young generation if it comes to climate change. Friday for the future. When I'm seeing the appetite and transparency on consumer products, the HIC is doing transparency. It's exciting to see how that works. And an enabling technology here with blockchain and a multi-stakeholder ledger, which is some idea, some concept, where we hope we can embrace the multi-stakeholder organizations in similar situations like ZDHC, like the SAC, to see what can we do together in order to elevate and accelerate the transparency.
I believe
okay, so?
Yeah, I believe this opportunity today is to invite the industry to open up to that conversation. I know that blockchain is a buzzword and it's not what's going to solve us or the industry, but it's definitely an accelerator to look at business models and supply chain communication in a different way and to increase that transparency and traceability that we all need in order to feel more confident that a product is or not something that is being claimed. So the call to action here is please join us in this movement, and I believe multi-stakeholder initiatives do have an important role to play in this revolution, digital revolution.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frank and Neliana. Thank you. Please be seated.